You do not fit in.
And I know why.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to And I Know Why, the podcast where we talk about real life and real healing.
This is part one of a two-part series. In this episode, you're going to know why you don't fit in and why you should stop trying to. So let's get to it.
So fitting in, this is the ever elusive concept that I feel like every human faces. Just regardless of how well you feel like you interact with your society or your culture or the people around you, there's kind of this constant thought of needing to be a part of everything and needing to fit in. So why do we care so much about being part of a larger whole? Why do we want to both fit in and have nothing to do with the societies or with people all simultaneously? So, guys, that's what we're going to talk about, because as it turns out, we all live in a society, even if it's different ones, right? Mm-hmm. And we just all have to deal with these problems, whether you like the society that you're in or you don't. Yeah. It's a natural part of life. And I feel like there are a lot of people that get really angry and upset about, oh, I don't like this about my culture, or, you know, just all these different things. I don't like the pressure from this. But, we all face these same things, even when it looks different.
Yeah, totally different. There are lots of ways that we can approach the need to belong in our society. It can be to a large group, but we are going to focus mainly on a few of the reasons why it's so challenging. Mm-hmm. So first, we'll start off with some anthropological and psychological reasons. And of course, we'll move into the spiritual and emotional reasons too, because those are just as important.
They really are. And I feel like a lot of times when people are talking about the need to fit in, they talk about like their anxieties around it, and they talk about the psychological pressures or the societal pressures on them. Mm-hmm. But there's not so much of an understanding of why spiritually it's happening, or why, more of the drive behind why your emotions and your spirit do want to fit in, like what's happening there as well, not just in your mind. So,
and just so I can say this too, we want to know those reasons because there's a part of us that if we just have a little bit of understanding, then we can figure out how to navigate it, right? We can figure out how to better be ourselves in all those situations.
Yeah, I think that's exactly how it is, because I think honestly, nobody fits in. Yep. And we kind of create this illusion that other people are fitting in. And we can match in certain ways. Like you can go, oh, okay, I can make it look the same as other people, but it doesn't feel the same. Or you can't quite get it to match exactly. And it becomes this kind of, I don't know, push and pull force in us of, how do I look like these things, but still feel like me and still figure out how to be myself, but how do I participate with everything? So I think it just gets really hard to fit any specific model. So I remember talking about the need to fit in my classes. I did my degree in anthropology, but I also did my minor in criminal justice. And I took a social deviance class, which was really fun.
I wish I had.
So,
that's so fun.
So I actually learned quite a lot about this, especially with doing my social deviance stuff for my criminal justice, because there are people that specifically go out of their way, not to just be their own self, but to go against whatever
creating
is.
The counterculture.
Yeah, creating more than, because I think counterculture can be really good.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to create something counter to what they've been shown.
Yes, and it ends up being like aggressive or stealing, like breaking social mores that are important, that keep people safe.
Yeah, a lot of times.
The social deviant in that way, like when we talked about in criminal justice, that's what that is. And we'll talk about like just normal deviance, how to like be yourself. Yeah. That kind of concept.
Yeah, because sometimes it starts to look like rebellion, right?
Yes.
And not everyone's comfortable with rebellion, but sometimes rebellion is the bridge to something better, too.
And I think that, when I took my social deviance class, like I learned the real difference because I was also talking about like subcultures.
Yeah.
So I learned the real difference between like a subculture and someone who's being socially deviant. So,
Cool.
yeah, so we're going to kind of get into this stuff, but you know, we're all pulled into the concept of wanting to fit in with our families, with our friends, in culture, our cultural things, even just like our town, our schools, our neighborhoods, the trends that are going on, and, you know, what influencers are doing, even political parties or fandoms or just all these different things, or even, you know,
even religions. I don't know if you said that.
I think I did. I don't know. Might have said church.
Yeah, maybe you did.
But, you know, we have kind of all these places, and even people like who read books, right? And you all read a series and everybody loves it, but people still have differing opinions on things.
And their viewpoint is drastically different.
Drastically different. Like I read one book in a series and one of the people did not like it at all. And I was going, what?
That
was really great. Yeah. And I felt like the author did it really well. And they were thinking the author changed the person's personality. And I was like, personality did not change. But, you know, there's a lot of places where we want to fit in, where we try, but it still just seems like there's no place for us. And I think that that's where a lot of the pain comes in when we think about fitting in, is that all of a sudden we feel like there's no place and that we're just kind of going to float forever and be constantly pretending or trying endlessly. So as we're going to get into this stuff, guys, I want to first start with talking about the social and cultural mores for a moment. And if you don't know what mores are, we're going to explain it. But mores are basically the known conscious and subconscious rules in societies.
And if we're looking at societies in general, you'll find rules, right? You're going to find written rules and you're going to find the unwritten rules. And for little kids, that's extremely confusing, right? The unwritten rules. You know, it's like how do you use your napkin instead of your pants, right? Stuff like that, which my teenager still wants to use his pants, right? But the reason why we have these rules is to make everyone stay in alignment, to create an order, right? They don't always have a great impact on everyone, though. They can create some problems.
Right.
And these problems we all face, but we still have to figure out how to agree on the rules.
Yes. And I feel like, and we've talked about this before, that people can get really bitter about the social constraints that they find themselves in, which is a good and a bad thing because it causes for change in places that change needs to happen. But you can't just, I don't know, sit and dwell in the blame of it and going, well, this is how my society was, and now that's the only way I can do it. Or I can't do anything different about it because that's just the way I was raised.
Right. Like, for instance, for me, my dad and my mom, but more my father, my dad was constantly saying the oldest person could do this or the oldest person could do that, even if they weren't responsible or even if they hadn't earned the right or the privilege to do stuff, they would get to do it. Meanwhile, I was going, I'm obeying all the rules. I'm doing these things. Why can't
I'm more mature.
I get to do those things? But it created, right, a resistance in me about age, which I'm still, I hardly remember my own age. Probably that's why, because it became so much of my brain that I was going to go against what that concept was that I didn't even pay attention to my numbers anymore.
So, you know, these rules, right? They're written and unwritten. You have them in your families. Every family has its own little culture. Make your own decisions and the own way things are done. And that little example in your family is how it works in societies and cultures and as it expands out. So these rules, like you're saying, are there to help everybody know how to interact with each other as well as the world around us. Because, it's important to know how to interact with a wild animal as opposed to a domesticated animal, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to go through some examples for you guys of what this looks like. Because a lot of mores, you don't even know that it's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just so ingrained.
It's so
us,
ingrained in you that you don't think about it. For instance, in the US, you go into a public restroom and you're going to pick a stall that is further away from ones that are occupied, right? You're not going to go, you see there, all of them are open except for one. You're not going to go to the one right next to it.
Unless you're in the airport and you're trying to be fast.
Yeah, if you have to go so right? But that's not your first choice. Yeah. So, another example of this, it would be, that's more in the back burner for us, but still a little more forward, is green means go.
Yeah.
Yellow means slow down. Red means stop.
Right.
Traffic cones.
Traffic cones, right? Yeah, construction. We all get used to that from a little young age even, right? We start seeing traffic cones in the car.
And that color yellow with the white, right?
Yeah.
Those colors together.
We recognize that means construction.
Yeah. That's how it is here.
Shake with the right hand.
Shake with the right hand. Those different things where, there's a lot of physical things like bubbles, right?
Yes.
Different countries have small bubbles, some have large bubbles.
Or if you're in the city versus the country.
The city versus the country. Right. So there's a lot of these little things that that dictate how we can safely interact with each other. Because when somebody does go against those things, then it's also an alert for us on safety, right? So it's very...
like for instance,
go ahead.
For instance, eye contact, right? So growing up, I was not allowed to give eye contact to my parents because that meant that I was being belligerent and then I would get in trouble. So I did the same thing with my teachers, anybody in authority, I never gave eye contact to. And so as I grew up and left home, it was really hard for me because I realized I had to give eye contact if I wanted people to trust me or to listen to me, right?
Yeah.
Or take me seriously.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I think eye contact is a huge one because there's a certain amount of time you should have eye contact with somebody.
Yes.
And if you do longer,
creepy.
And if you're not doing enough, well, then maybe you're not paying attention, And there's a lot of these things like, people who are on the spectrum have to be taught these kinds of things. And that's one way you can kind of understand even what things you just know is by figuring out what things do people need to be taught who are maybe a little bit more atypical or, to really kind of open up and see. But, when you go to a new country, you notice those things.
Yeah, totally.
And you see, oh my gosh, they're getting really intimate with people because, this, right? Not really like that, but you guys know what I mean, right? Like you getting right up on kissing to the side of someone's cheek.
And, or like, I remember the first time I went to Mexico, we got ice cream cones and we were going to walk in the street and eat it. And it was considered very, very, ill-mannered.
Right.
To eat like that on the street
on the go.
And walk on the go. And so I had to pull myself back, sit down in the chair and eat when I didn't want to, right? Because I'm used to here in America, we often will just like lick while we're going. And so that was really hard for my brain to adjust to that other concept for them.
Yeah. And I think, there's eye contact and smiling or the ways you eat, the ways you drink. There's so many things that control what actions we take.
Yeah.
And that help us to fit in. And that fitting in creates that safety like I'm talking about. So when somebody goes outside of that in an extreme way, like sometimes I think people get triggered just by somebody being rebellious or somebody, going to the beat of their own drum. That can be very scary to people. But, what that really is trying to teach them about is somebody who's going, someone who gets too close to you, right? Or somebody who's predatory, trying to help us to be aware of those kinds of things as opposed to just, I don't know.
One's a shallow concept and one is more about keeping you safe.
Yes. And sometimes people confuse those.
Yes.
And it is hard to know. And I think especially because I think most people... they've been kind of, retesting what's safety like in the U.S., And it's actually safer now for kids to play outside than it was when you were growing up. There's less likely that, like, someone would kidnap them or these things would happen. But that's not really how we...
That's not how we interpret it anymore.
We don't interpret it that way anymore. Because I think that in a lot of ways we experience less danger. And so it's harder for our minds to know what is danger. And our I don't know, our belief and our understanding of what is dangerous changes as well.
Yeah, I think you might be right. I think we talk about it a lot more, right? So it brings an awareness to people's minds more. Our children, you know, are taught, don't talk to strangers.
Right.
Well, I was taught, don't talk to strangers, but I was probably around 10 when I started hearing it. Right. Not, you know, 4 or 3.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that, of course, that has created some anxieties too in people.
And I think, you know, I grew up hearing the don't talk to strangers, but I really found that it was people I knew, right? And that's kind of what statistically it is. So with my girls, I've been doing tricky people.
That's
or
a good
talking,
one.
you know, or saying strange behaviors.
Yeah.
That I've leaned more towards doing that.
I love that way.
Because it's more...
Coconuts whining.
My dog, she loves being in for the podcast and we did not bring her in. But... yeah, I mean, there are these things that we try to put in place to help. And that's why I think strange behaviors when teaching children about safety is important, because that's really an indicator.
Yeah.
Is when somebody has a strange behavior, something that they're not supposed to be doing, they're not supposed to act like that.
Right.
And that's why it is important that we have cultural and social things, because we have to be aware of what's safe and what's dangerous.
Yeah.
So I guess that's kind of a little bit of a tangent, but...
Hey, it's a good
tangent. It's a good tangent. So, you know, you learn these things starting as a baby. And some things your parents and your culture specifically teach you. Like you go to school, you learn these things. Or mom says, you know, you don't put both of your elbows on the table like we're doing right now, you know. Yeah. And other things you just kind of know, or you have to figure it out as you go.
Yeah.
And so those are what social mores are, you guys, in case you didn't know. And reminder for anybody who did.
And let's just kind of put a pin in that. So you guys, I just want you to kind of put that thought on hold, because I know we've kind of gone into a tangent a bit.
Right.
But
I'm going to let
because we will come back to that. I'll let you get Coco.
Sorry.
Our little Coco baby will not be quiet. No one's around to help her go away.
So let's jump in to why we feel the need to belong. We're seeing all these things with the social mores of like, okay, this is what gets created.
Yes.
This is what happens. But why do you feel like you have to participate in it?
Yeah. So I we kind of talked about this already ahead of time, but I think that every person feels the need for tribal connectedness, to feel like they belong. And tribal connectedness does not have to be like just a small, intimate group. It can be a big group. So
and
lots of times people think of tribal as just really small.
Yeah, I want to specify why we say tribal connectedness over just connected.
Okay, go ahead.
Because, I mean, first of all, sometimes when we hear the word tribal, it communicates something specific to us. And I think that you're, talking about that smallness. I think it's maybe the intimacy.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, I think it is. The feeling of family, right?
Yeah.
Whether we make that family or we're born into it, it gives us a feeling of belonging in a tribe, someplace where we can kind of say we match.
And I feel like a tribe has specific types of people in it.
Okay.
So in order for a tribe to work, there's, a lead, the leader. The leader. There's a wise person. And that wise person normally does healing and some other things, right?
Yeah.
And then you have like people who have specific tasks where it's broken out. So it's kind of this connecting feeling, but where everybody has a role.
Yeah, like you might have someone who's a good cook or someone who's, great at shopping, things like that. And
so it kind of, this tribal connectedness is this concept of everybody's being themselves and fulfilling their role, but connecting all together and making it better. Yeah. Right? Lifting everybody
working together to make something better.
So that's why we're saying tribal connectedness as opposed to just connectedness.
Connected, yeah. And I think it all starts back before we came to Earth, actually.
So with our spirits.
Yeah, okay. I really do. I think it started, some of us call it the pre-existence or pre-Earth or...
life before.
Yeah, life before, that's the same thing. Right? But, or incarnate, before we were incarnated into our physical bodies. So, and of course, you guys, I am assuming all of us believe that we existed before we came here. We were not, our consciousness didn't just happen because we came to Earth. We were before we came to Earth. And so I do think that it started back then.
Yeah.
Wherever then was, right?
Yeah. This space where we start, like you said, having that, there's an awareness, a consciousness. And also with that, the awareness and consciousness with other people.
Yes.
Because it wasn't just like you were alone
by yourself.
Yeah.
So you had an awareness of others around you, and you communicated with them. You connected with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that, I think, is part of that belonging feeling. And I think we came to Earth with that need to belong and feel connected because we felt it before.
Gotcha.
Does that
like
make
we
sense?
felt the draw for it before, or we had it we already had it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we already had it. I do believe that we already had it. Were there things that we weren't sure about? For sure. I mean, we were not just these all-knowing beings and perfectly comfortable with everything, but we felt connected.
Right.
And we felt like we belonged.
Yeah.
Like there was a purpose behind our spirits, and being with each other.
Yeah. And, I kind of think, where we were before was home, right? And it's kind of like you go off to college or something.
Yeah.
You go away, you come to Earth, and it's this place to learn and this place to be with people and to really discover so much about yourself, but it doesn't quite feel all the way right. Or things don't quite match. Like when you go home to see your family and you have the food that your mom always cooked or whatever, but when you're up and when you go to school or you go to other people's places, the food's different.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of this, I don't know.
It's there, but it's not. You might have spaghetti at home and then you have spaghetti over somewhere else. And
it's different.
Yeah. It doesn't, anthropologically, it's a totally different
thing.
And taste, right?
Yeah.
I just thought of this idea that it might help to explain what we're saying. When you picture a child, and I was thinking of it just now because Azora, she's almost gonna walk soon, right?
Yeah, that's my little girl.
And when we watch children learn to walk or crawl, you see these parents, who care, who are like, come on, you can do it. And you have this feeling, and you can even picture the child feels comfortable in their learning.
Right.
Because they feel like they belong, that someone's there caring about them and cheering them on. But in reality, our life doesn't usually feel like that.
Right.
We don't feel that connected. We don't feel people cheering us on and telling us we can go through the hard stuff and make it to the other side, right? So I think that's kind of a little bit of what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, for that belonging.
Moment.
And that's, I think, that tribe feeling of, you have those people that are there backing you. And in our next episode, we're going to talk a lot about that.
Yeah.
Because right now, we want to lay the groundwork, and then we want to help you guys to know, how can I be myself and find my people to create that tribe feeling. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Because, when, before we come here, we have our own experiences and our own things, but belonging, very potentially could not have been an issue then, where you just feel so confident, and sometimes, like for a little baby, like Azora, there's not even an awareness that she wouldn't belong. Right?
Yes.
But all of a sudden you come to Earth and you're like,
it's not the same.
It's not the same. I might not belong. Because it's challenging, right? It's different.
And you don't know the next step, right? So I think sometimes that not knowing the next step also creates that imbalance feeling like maybe I'm going to fall down. Maybe I don't belong, because we start to interpret our mistakes or our insecurities as implying that we don't belong.
Yeah.
That something's wrong with us.
Right. And I think, I haven't met a single person who doesn't want to belong. Now, there are absolutely people who go, I don't want to belong. I go against the grain. I don't do anything like that. But they started to feel that way because they already felt like they didn't belong when they wanted to belong.
Right.
And that's something we all feel. It's not just, that happens in lots of different places in life.
Right.
Where we feel like, okay, I belong in this space, but I don't belong here.
And we always feel like we have to define that.
Yes,
too.
we do.
It's an interesting thing, huh? That we always say, oh, this is where I belong and this is not. Instead of just saying, well, it's okay. I feel a little different here, but maybe I can still.
Maybe that's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we all still have this rooted desire in us to belong and to be accepted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just so we're feeling, what we're saying is that starts before you even come to Earth.
Yeah.
You have this feeling already that you belong. You come to Earth and all of a sudden it's different and it feels uncomfortable. And people have different ideas and people want to live their life differently. And society tells you to do certain things. And all of a sudden you start going, oh, I don't belong in this.
Right.
But, you're looking for it's the desire to belong and to be accepted.
Yeah. And I think it shows up really easily for a 5-year-old, a kindergartner.
Yes.
So you can see it really easily around 5 years old. A child starts to try and match everyone, right?
Yes.
So it's why you can go to a grade school and see the kindergartners and they fold their arms and they're walking really good, like the teacher said, not to touch anybody or anything, right? And this is your bubble and don't go out your bubble. Right. And as soon as a little kid starts putting their fingers on the wall, like this, the other kids are like, you're not doing it right. You're supposed to do this. So they totally get this feeling that if you don't do everything exactly the way you're told, then you don't belong or you're not right or something like that.
And I think a lot of adults are in this space in different things, right? Because we have so many different places to fit in. And so we'll be further ahead or more awake or aware in some places than we are in others.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
That it's like anything in life, we can be a little more mature in certain areas of life and a little behind in others, right? So the same for belonging.
Yeah, we really struggle, that need to match, right? The 5-year-old needs it to match, and you want to have the same pencils and the same everything as other kids, but you don't want to stand out.
Yeah.
Right? And also, there's that survival thing again, right? If you're in a herd and a lion's trying to get you, you do not want to stand out. You do not want to stand out as the weak link.
You don't want to be the outside of the circle. Right, you don't want to be the last in line.
You're like
picked off.
You get picked off easy.
Where's mom? Oh,
right.
The lion got her.
Attention. So, it really helps children feel that so strongly because that also helps them with that. Like, okay, you have to pay attention. You need to pay attention so that you can survive.
Yeah, it's huge. I think you're right. We shouldn't discount that at all for just our innate purpose of survival.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of in there. And as adults, like you'll meet people who still feel it frantically, right? And that's the survival that you're feeling, where it's like, if I'm not accepted here, then something's wrong with me. I'm not safe. It tells them a lot of things.
Yeah.
Whether they're true or not, but it communicates and we interpret the things that are happening to us.
And I remember when you were really little, probably around 3, and I would be putting my makeup on or something, and you would come right over there and you'd watch me, and then you'd grab stuff and try to copy me, right? And I think that was part of belonging.
Absolutely.
Trying to, and how you loved matching me, right?
Yes.
It was so cute.
Matching and connection.
Yep, because that helped you feel, I think, like you belong, like you're going to be like mom. It's not just, I'm going to be like mom. It's like, I belong.
Yeah, I belong. Mom accepts me.
Yeah.
I do this thing, and I'm recognized as connecting. And these people... I think we've all been in a space where we've kind of frantically wanted to connect with people, right? And it can become so frantic feeling for us that we sometimes don't even stop to think about if these are people we really want to connect with.
Right, yeah.
Do they
it's worth it.
Yeah, is it worth it? Do I actually want to do these same things and think these same ways? But that... that is something I think that can trip us up in life is that desire to fit in or, and that can even look like, it's not even like the desire in competition, right? In an unhealthy competition.
Right.
Where that's actually still you trying to belong and
still
to fit
trying,
so.
Yeah, it's not always about, I want to be the head or the leader. It's about, I'm trying to see how I can fit in here.
Right.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, so... And to belong isn't always about matching in reality. I don't think it is.
Yeah.
I think it's our first thought or first interpretation because it's the first experience, right? That we're having as we interact with others, whether it's at 5 or earlier,
Right.
where we're like, wait, something's not the same.
Yeah.
Something's different. Is it me? Am I, can I fix this?
So what do you think it's really rooted in for people? Because there's, the need to belong, but there's something behind a need, right? There's something that they're looking for, that need to belong. What does it tell them?
Yeah, I think it goes down to being accepted or loved for who you are.
Right.
Right? Because, so my spiritual side says that before we came to earth, we were already accepted for who we are.
Right.
Right? So we came down with some consciousness, awareness that was ingrained in us that we were already, I better look at the camera, that we are already belong, that we are already accepted for who we are. So when we come down and someone tells us no, or the thing we were interested in doing turns out to be dangerous, like touching the stove or something, right? Then all of a sudden it creates that doubt, and we start to interpret things as, I'm not accepted for who I am, right?
It creates that dissonance in us.
Yes.
And then we go, I'm not accepted, but also I'm not enough.
Right. Yeah.
Because when, if somebody doesn't accept you into their group, whether you wanted to be in it or not, you still ask the question, am I enough?
Yep. And, so am I valued for who I am? Am I enough? And consequently, then I will feel safe if I am valued and if I am enough.
Yeah.
Then I feel safe.
And so you guys can kind of see why these concepts of survival are important, because that's the safety. The belonging brings the safety. It puts value on who you are, acceptance of who you are, and knowing that you're enough just for being.
Yes.
And that's a lot of things, guys. That's a lot of things to pin on if you fit in with random cultural things or little things that kind of form together.
Yeah, it really is a lot.
It's a lot to put on that.
Yeah.
It's a lot writing on that, because that's a lot of self-esteem. That's a lot of just centeredness in who you are. So, man, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay, because in reality, guys, we're all just trying to have an understanding that we are enough.
Yeah.
And matching what we think seems like we could easily be accepted. Trying to match people is that first step that we take of like, okay, this will mean I'm enough.
Yeah, it's like the experiment of life, right? So the first thing you're doing is trying to match everyone.
Yeah.
Oh, if I match you, then do you like me? Then am I enough? Yeah. Then will I feel safe and good about myself, right? So yeah, I think you're right. It's that it builds that feeling.
Yeah. So if you're,
test it.
when you're very first becoming aware of who you are, you start trying to match all these lists that society or that school or that your family create.
Right.
You start trying to match those because you want to feel like you're enough. But, it starts, well, let's talk about how that looks when we are trying to fit in.
I thought of this one idea. Okay. So when my kids were little, and really honestly throughout all their growing up years in my house, I didn't like them to say stupid, right?
Right.
Stupid is a bad word. We don't say that word. It's not nice. We don't need to say it.
Right.
And but as soon as you go to school, all the kids are saying stupid. So you guys want to match and fit in and be cool like the other kids who say stupid. And so that becomes a real split or a divide, because at home you can't say it.
Right.
And at school, you need to say it if you want to be cool. So how do you deal with that, right? And that's all that same feeling about matching and fitting in. You guys would be like, oh, I can't say it at home. Oh, I get to say it at school with my friends,
Yeah. And I think, you made the allowance for us that at school we could say stupid.
Yeah.
And, I think that this is kind of a hard thing as a parent.
Yeah.
When you have certain rules and certain things that you dictate.
Yeah.
But you do also have to take into consideration, what do they need to fit in this sphere? Because it is extremely hard to not fit.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you have to fit or encourage your children to match everything. You want them to think for themselves. But there's going to be things that, each person pulls on that they feel like, this is the thing that makes me fit in.
Right.
Even if it really doesn't, but they feel like they do, and then it does.
It seems to make them feel good, soothe them, right? So, like, I was always saying you shouldn't swear too, but on the other hand, if you guys got really angry and you said hell or damn, I'd be like,
okay,
it's okay, I get it,
Yeah.
But I still didn't want you to. But if you said it at school, I knew that you were probably saying it at school, right, with your friends to help fit in. Well, Taggart would have.
I never.
But that would have made him fit in, and so it was me picking the battle.
Yeah.
I don't give over the whole field. Because I don't want my kids to say things that are not kind or inappropriate when you don't need to, right?
Right, yeah.
So still I'm trying to teach them appropriate things, but also, stupid becomes a bad word. So when they say stupid at school, great, they're cool.
It's a bad word. And, like Emmy learned the word hate. Emmy's 4, my daughter. And, and I talked with her about, instead of making it like, we never say that word, and freaking out at her about it, because that's a really strong word.
Yeah.
I talked to her about, wow, that's a strong word. We only use that word when we really feel it. And she did really well with that. She took it and she was like, okay, when I really feel this way. And I think that that's actually kind of key, right? Both of these stories, when you feel that way, because in society or in groups, when should you do what everybody else is doing?
Yeah. That's the question. That's the balance or the tightrope.
Right. It's that same thing. When should you do these things? You should do it when you really feel truly, not in like a frantic, oh my gosh, I have to do this. But when you're like, oh, you know what? That matches me. Yeah. That's what I want to do.
Or not get bullied into it.
Yeah, don't get bullied into it. Right. And I think like interior design stuff, it's on my mind because I've been, I'm moving into a new home and I'm trying to figure out what I want to do design wise. But there are trends. And there are different things that pop up, right? That everybody's doing this.
Right.
And that's always hard for me. I don't want to do what everybody else is doing. But what if I like one of the things that everyone's doing, So it's kind of this place where you can start to learn, okay, what are your motivations?
Right.
Oops, I forgot. Okay. Okay, we're going a really good direction, and I'm just wondering, do we feel...
I do want to... So when... I think I can give this example. So my parents were very poor when I was growing up. Mm-hmm. And my dad had a lot of pride in our poorness, right? And there are different kinds of pride. So if you're watching and you're thinking, well, pride is good, you're correct. Pride can be good. But if pride makes you not see other options and other opportunities, then it's messing up your life, right?
Yeah.
So my dad always had this thing about, we're poor and we're proud of it, right?
So poor and proud.
But when I was growing up, I didn't want to be poor. I didn't want to have to go to a yard sale to get my pants. And I didn't want to wear a coat that someone else knew was theirs before.
Or have weevils in your flower.
Yes, or weevils in my flower, right. So things like that. That's a really sad story. So, so the pride that I was taught was stay there. Stay in your poorness. Stay in your unempowered feelings,
Right.
And so I felt consequently like I was having to dig myself, out of a big, deep hole in order to get to a place where I wasn't poor.
Right.
And be proud of that, right? Be proud that I wasn't poor rather than that I was poor. So that was really difficult for me. But as I worked and I started going and I went to college and stuff, my father totally fought the whole way that I should do anything like that because I thought I was too good for them. That's the way he looked at it, perceived it. And so consequently, I didn't feel like I belonged to my family, but I also didn't feel like I belonged with my college friends, because we were so different. We saw things differently. And or experienced everything differently, right? So that is just another example. So we do not, let me see if I can say this. We don't feel truly happy when that happens, and we don't really feel like we belong either.
Yeah.
And
I think, to understand too, your dad's reaction. Why did he react negatively to you improving your life? What you were doing was telling him a lot of things about himself.
Right. He reflected it on himself.
It reflected on himself. And it's that survival concept again. She's doing it differently. She's going to either kill me or kill herself. So it's not good, right?
Both.
We're both, he's going like this. And we have to learn that difference of, when somebody's doing something a little bit differently, okay, is that bad different or is that good different?
Right.
Like, Emmy, she loves Link and Zelda, the game. I never did that, right? So part of me could be like, that's not okay. You can't like that. You can't do that. But, I have to take into consideration.
Yeah.
She's different than me.
She is different, yeah.
And she can like those different things, and I have to adjust in my brain. Oh, how can I take these things that she's changing with and that she feels drawn to doing, because that's a whole another fandom that I've never entered into.
Right. Yeah, because I didn't do that.
How do I help transition and bring those things that are important to her from the game into our life, those kinds of things.
And she's hilarious, by the way. I just have to say this because one time when I was visiting at their house, so they had this hallway, and Emmy decided that she needed to have an obstacle course that Link and Zelda would do in the game. And so they had yarn zigzagging across the walls. Is that the right way to say it? Zigzagging across the walls.
So you can jump over it, or you have to crawl under it.
I had to crawl. I had to jump over. I had to use, she gave me a string that was supposed to be a lasso, and I was supposed to swing it up onto the fan, which was the dragon. So I had all these things I had to do. I can tell you I was exhausted, first of all, by the time we were done playing. That play was super energetic and exercising me like crazy, you guys.
Yeah,
but she was so into it. But that's it. I mean, Taggart, he used to be into Pokemon, and he could find analogies with Pokemon in his life.
Yeah,
everything was Pokemon, and it taught him many lessons. And I had to adapt to that because I didn't think about Pokemon like that, but he did, and it actually taught him a lot of lessons. So I had to give it kudos, like, good job, Pokemon, for helping my son see these things.
And also, just as like the fitting in thing, that was something that Taggart had where he fit in with a certain group. That was a like, hey, here's, and that's why, having common interests with friends, that's so great. Yeah. Because even though you're going to be different, you find those common things and, oh, look, now we fit together. This works for us. Yeah. And so, as we're navigating life and we're trying to figure out how do we fit in, right? The 5-year-olds are matching. I have to do everything the same. But then, guys, we start hitting the teenage years.
Oh, yeah.
And nobody understands them.
That's their mantra, right?
That's their mantra.
No one understands.
And it kind of makes it so they all fit in together and they're all the same.
Right.
Which is a hard thing.
And it's also a good thing, right? Because we have talked about, and like we did a little bit at the beginning, where when we see certain injustices or things that aren't right in our life and in our family or our community, and we are willing to say that's not right, or you don't understand me, it creates a bridge for us to try and do something more authentic and true to what we see life should really be about.
And that's why you have to go through the teenage years,
right?
You know, where you really need to, and it's gonna, for some people it's really extreme,
right? It
is. And when you have hopefully a parent who can help guide you through that, and I felt like you did a really good job of creating that atmosphere for me. And it'll be interesting to kind of hear how it's going with Athen and Aaron right now. But, you created a space and limitations for me to help me to navigate through that, because there's a lot that you figure out and you don't really truly get your voice or know who you are until you're reaching into your 20s.
Yes,
and,
for sure.
So there's a lot that's happening there. But, teenagers kind of have this ingrained feeling nobody understands me and I don't fit in.
Right, yeah. And it's a bit more, what's the word? It's more black and white for a teenager.
Yes.
Whereas as you get older, life can become a little more abstract, and you can have different concepts float in your brain, and you're not judging them all as right or wrong, right? Or have to do this or don't have to do that. So, yeah, and because I have 2 teens right now, and it really is interesting to watch them work through what makes them feel like they belong. I think people can have different views of what belonging means, right?
Yeah.
Athen and Aaron. Athen is more about friends, help her to know if she belongs.
Right.
And judging others, right? She loves to judge others to see if they belong, or if she's doing it right or wrong.
Right.
She's doing that comparison thing. And then Aaron, he's always looking about how to show his masculinity.
Right.
That helps him feel like he belongs. How do I show my masculinity? And for a lot of teens, and we were talking about this the other day, he's going to tease more. He's going to kind of ridicule and laugh at his friends, and they're going to give it back to him, dish it back, because really guys do that a lot more than girls, and it's all in good fun. And as girls, if we hear a girl do that, we think mean girl, right? But for boys, it's not usually that way. And so again, as a parent, I've had to allow a certain amount of wiggle room for that.
Right. And then understanding.
Right, because when he's with his friends and they're dissing each other, my brain goes, oh my gosh, that is so rude.
Don't talk to each other like that.
Right?
Don't you want to stay friends?
I walk in and they're all smiling and laughing and pushing each other and ha, ha, ha. So it is different, right, for what makes him feel like he belongs versus Athen. Yeah. And it's funny.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because I think you're right. Everybody creates this different concept of what makes them belong. Like there's something, because at first I think we kind of have this overwhelming thought that you have to match every single thing on the list. Yeah. And then you start going, well, maybe I don't have to match everything. I don't have to match all of it, but this is the thing I have to do to match. Yeah. And it kind of changes with age for you. Yeah. And then I do think that some adults get stuck in certain ages and the concept of what it means to belong somewhere. Yeah. But, we also have awarenesses where we all of a sudden realize we don't belong.
Well, and I'll go one step further on that because I'm aging now, right? Mm-hmm. So I had a brother who he's passed now, but he was a total partier. His whole life he's partying. Well, when you're 60 and you're partying with 20-year-olds, it starts to look weird and creepy, right?
It was weird and creepy. Doesn't just look weird.
Didn't, but he didn't know how to adjust it and change it. He could only think that if you're going to party, you have to do it with these kind of people at this age.
Right. This is how partying looks. Yeah. And I fit in when I party.
And he really didn't fit in anymore. But he kept doing it that way. He stayed in that thought process, imagining that he fit in when he really didn't, and should have probably moved on to a different way of partying.
Right, do it a little differently. I remember I had gone to a private school for a while, and I switched to a public school. And right before the transition, my friend at the time had shown me the song Umbrella by Rihanna. I'd never heard it, right? Life-changing for me because I hadn't heard that kind of music before. Yeah. Not that I was super sheltered. We had, we listened to the radio. We did things. That was just, a new type of song.
Yeah. And I wasn't as good at listening to the radio I would buy an album.
Yeah.
And so I didn't
she'd
always
buy albums, and we'd try different things that way.
But I wasn't always like up to date on the current most popular stuff because of that too.
I heard this song and I was like, this is such a cool song. And I got to my public school, I made friends, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to share this song. And so I remember there was this guy who was my friend, and I was like, you've got to listen to this song. It's so good. And he got super excited, and he put the headphones in, and he was like, this is Umbrella by Rihanna. This came out like a year ago. And I was stunned. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't fit in with this music.
A whole year behind.
I'm a whole year behind. And I had no idea. And I came to you and Dad, right?
Yeah.
And I don't remember what I did.
Well, she said, Mom, I want to listen to music. And I'm like, well, we have lots of it. You can listen to it. I didn't understand, right? And so she said, no, all my friends are listening to different music than what we listen to. And I was like, what? I'm so sad.
And I still love the other music, but we've done it wrong. We did. Yeah, we did. We had iTunes, and then I found out, Dad, I think, showed me that you could look at like the top 10. Yeah. You could look at the trending music. And find out what's popular. And it breathed so much peace to me, even though I didn't necessarily like all the songs and I didn't listen to, like, include them in my life. But I started learning about, okay, I can have a little bit of this.
And I still can feel that emotion that I felt hearing that. What I was doing made her feel like she didn't fit in. I was like, oh my gosh. It was painful for me to hear it. I was glad she could talk about it, but it was painful for me because I was like,
I didn't mean for that to happen.
I don't know how to do that, quite frankly. It wasn't just I didn't mean, but I don't know how to do that because I didn't grow up with very much, right? So I'd have a radio, and it's not like I used it. Some of my siblings used it to connect with people. Right. But I didn't because I was one of those people that didn't hear the words.
Right. She does not hear the words.
So I was like, just the music. And I'd like, this is good music. And then I'd find out later it was about something I totally
When I was little, I'd be like, Mom, this is a bad song. You can't listen to this song. She was like, it is. I'm like, oh my gosh. My mom is going to go to hell. She's listening to bad music and not knowing about it.
It was so silly, but I just didn't. So, I mean, for me, the emotional side was that I couldn't provide a way for you to fit in.
Yeah. And that's hard because you want your children to fit in with other children.
In their groups, in their peers.
You want them to fit. You want them to fit in because that brings a certain ease to life when you can find those places to fit in. Yeah. And I think as you get older, you learn that there are even more places to fit in than you first thought. And you start kind of branching out and finding those types of people.
Can you tell the story about Kelsey and dance, though, because I think it's so funny.
I think it's Kelsey, hilarious. I'll have to ask you about this. I'll say the story, and if Kelsey doesn't want it shared, we won't share.
We won't.
But
it's so cute.
Kelsey is so vibrant about life, and she was in dance when she was maybe 5 or 6. She was in a dance class, and she knows how to move her body. She has so much fun. Yeah. And but she didn't like the choreography, but she didn't know that she was changing it really, right? Because her body just wanted to move in a different way. And, that concept of going to the beat of your own drum. And so Kelsey has rewatched her video of her doing her dance concert. And she was shocked. She was like, I thought I was following all the steps. I thought I was nailing the timing. I remember thinking like, I'm doing so good at this dance and everybody's loving it. But when she watched it, did she do good dance moves? Of course she did. But they were not anything choreographed. And she made up all these new different movements
compared to what everyone
else is doing ballet, and Kelsey's over here doing modern and hip hop, and she puts her arms above her heads and wiggles her legs to make them look like jelly. I mean, it was just it was just amazing and wonderful, because that's who Kelsey just does. She does the
following.
Things that she follows her inner heart, right? Yeah. But that was very hard for Sherry. I know that when she was like, oh, but Sherry did so good. She didn't get up and tell Kelsey, you can't do that, and she enjoyed it. But it is hard because, Kelsey didn't know until later that she hadn't fit in there.
Yeah. Good on her mom to not tell her, because that is so hard as a parent when you have your kids in some group and you want them to belong in that group.
But, you know, I mean, so there are some times when we retroactively look back at things and we're like, ooh, I did not belong there. That was not a good space for me. Whether it was super negative or you're just like, yeah, actually, that didn't work. That did not work out for me. And I think, you know, people find that out, especially as like, I don't know, entering your 20s and kind of entering your 30s, leaving. Yeah. I don't know, what do you think?
I think, 30s? For sure the 20s are still difficult for a lot of people.
You're kind of searching around in so many ways.
Nowadays it's even more difficult. Not necessarily because it has to be, but because of how we have kind of given the impression to people that it's weird. I think it's weird because a part of our society is saying, you know, walk to your own pace, be your own person. But the other part is also full of people who are bullying you or pushing you to try and match certain things.
And trying to match them exactly.
If you're my friend, then you have to do it this way.
Yes.
You know, if you go to this, if you work at this business, you need to do it this way.
And I think actually this is showing up a lot in politics for people or like the mask issue, right? With COVID.
Right.
That was so confusing and hard for people because people who were liberal didn't want to wear masks. People who were right-wing wanted to wear masks. And it was all confused.
And everyone's like,
don't wear the mask, wear the mask. And if you were someone who was more left and you didn't wear a mask, people would label you a certain way.
Right.
And vice versa, right?
Yep.
So it can, you know, I think that you're right. There's so much more, what I think is that there's so many more ways to fit in now that it actually creates a lot more ability to not fit in. Right? Because there's so many spaces. You know, you can...
Because we're always trying to fit in.
Yes.
So we don't say, well, I'm going to fit in here, but not there. Instead, we go around saying, I need to fit in all these places.
I need to be in all of these.
Do it all. And so we create more, I want to say, dissonance within our soul.
I think so.
More disconnect within who we really are because we think we have to fit in all of these places. Or everyone needs to accept us. You know, things like that. Instead of finding out the best way that we can be accepted for who we are or who the people are that will appreciate us. You know, we're trying to find all of it instead of just a couple. So I think we can work towards belonging. But it's partly because we long to have an impact. Right?
Yes.
An impact for good, impacting our society or the space that we are in. We want to do it for good. We want to make an impact that someone else says, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you are here. Right? And so you can feel that what that means to you, right? And when you feel that feeling, whatever that good feeling is, right, then you guys say, oh, I belong. I make a difference. I do good, and people know it, right?
People see the things I do, and they know that it's not just good, but it's helpful, right? It's uplifting, and that's that tribal connectedness, right? Everybody's doing their part, and everybody's lifting each other up. We're all feeling successful together,
right? And so I was thinking about this because we talked about it a little bit, and since you've been visiting right now. We've been doing some Tai Chi together. But when I first started doing Tai Chi, all I wanted to do was follow, right? Partly because that's what you do when you're learning. But even as I learned it, I still would rather follow. I was like, just let me do all my moves right behind you and we'll be fine.
Right.
And then the day came when my Shifu said, Domonique, you need to start teaching. And I was like, I can't. I don't belong in the teaching sphere. I don't have very much patience, you know, or I've only been doing this for 3 years, things like that. I had all these reasons of why I couldn't be able to fit into the teacher mode. Right. So, and then once I pushed myself and said, okay, you're going to do it anyway. It's going to be okay. This is a new level for you to learn and to grow in. Then as I started teaching, I was like, oh, I do belong as a teacher. I can make a difference as a teacher. And I saw the impact I had on some of the people because I was teaching. So then, and that turnaround ability as we mature from feeling like I don't belong or that's not me to, oh, that really is me. I could do that is important to know that we can go through that and find answers to how we do belong there.
Yeah. And I think that you're right. It's kind of this natural progression. Try to match. Don't match.
Yeah.
Figure out how you really want it to be.
Yeah. And I teach my way. I don't teach the way my Shifu taught, but I see how I make a difference. And that's the part of belonging that I'm talking about, where we have an impact and we see that impact.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that, making an impact looks different for different people.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that one area of culture that we talk about this a lot would be art, right? Mm-hmm. Where art makes a difference. Is art necessary? Some people would say no, but it really is a necessity.
I think it is.
In life.
In some form or
Yeah,
another.
in some form. And it has this way of adding to us that you might not necessarily look at or think about art like, oh, I need art. But you do need art. And it compels you and it does certain things for you. It creates the space that you want, or it does a lot of things. But so we've talked about all these things, and I want to talk a little bit about that at the beginning we were talking about the social mores and people fitting in and not fitting in, the rebels, the subcultures, and then the social deviants. So we're not going to talk about social deviants because that's just a lot of extreme stuff, right? We're going to talk about like normal rebels, the skater kids, people who are part of these subcultures. And these are really important for us. At first, it's that concept of needing to fit in and to follow. But then all of a sudden having this awareness like, oh, I don't know that that's true to me, right? You realize you don't belong.
Yeah.
And you start asking different questions. Yeah. So I want to say, though, as people are learning how to go to the beat of their own drum, how to do things true to themselves, it is not always pretty, right? And it becomes kind of this extreme and this penduluming effect. So people go from feeling extreme about this thing, feeling totally extreme about it on the other way, when in reality, being in the middle and is the calm place, is the place that's really true.
Yeah. And it's so the words that I was taught a long time ago is efference and afference. And it has to do with societies trying to find a middle ground or a balanced place. And remember, again, balance to me is not about a seesaw so much as it's about a bicycle. Because when you ride a bike, you're able to go forward because you know how to stay on the bike correctly, right? With that balance. So the balance looks different. But in what we end up thinking of it is more like a seesaw, right? Or a pendulum. And so if you're a married person, or maybe you even have a roommate, and let's say one person's extremely messy and disorganized, then how do you think the other person's going to be? Extremely organized and extremely anal, because they're trying to create a balanced effect. But what they've really done is just create opposition, opposite sides. The pendulum swings like this instead, and nobody's really happy. And so that feeling of when you are trying to find the difference or find a way to find your place, we end up, human nature, we end up going like this.
You end up on the seesaw instead of the bike.
And that's, it ends up, then we go around saying, how come I'm not happy? Or how come my spouse isn't fun to be with anymore, or something, instead of understanding that's not the way to do it.
And at first, when people make this switch, they feel like they belong. Because there are other people who are outraged too. There are other people who are so mad that they belong in that extreme, just like they were the extreme on the other side. And this happens for people in religion a lot. When they leave a religion and join a new one or whatever things, they have this polarization. But then as they start to settle in, and hopefully think through things. They go, oh, maybe that was a bit of an extreme.
Yeah, maybe I don't want to be so far over there.
So far over
maybe
there.
I want to pull it back just a little bit and find where it works for me.
Because people, people are still trying to find their space. And I think some people probably spend their whole life trying to find their space in different areas of their life.
Right.
But the goal is that, that you find that way to reach that center point.
Yeah.
Where you are aware of what you match and you don't match, but you know what you want, And I don't think it's a bad thing to not fit in.
No, I don't think it is either. I think it's more about what are we doing in here and in here when we feel like
in
we
your
don't
head and
fit
your
in.
heart for those who can't
Oh,
see.
yeah, sorry. Here and here means head and heart.
Right.
When because we interpret it to mean something that maybe it doesn't really mean.
Yeah.
If I make a cake and Ty doesn't eat it,
that's my
husband.
Yeah,
it's her husband. Maybe it's because he is trying to do all protein right now and not because my cake tastes nasty.
Right.
So I might, because of my insecurities, interpret, oh, Ty doesn't like my cooking.
Right. My cooking's not enough, right?
Yeah.
It always is going to come back to, am I enough? Is this enough? Do I do enough?
Right. And if I feel threatened by it, then I would say, I'm never cooking for him.
Yeah.
Because it's not good for him.
Yeah.
He doesn't like it.
So, it's important when you feel like you don't fit in, when you feel like you don't want to fit in. The important thing is that you're asking the right questions about why and what you are currently doing and why you're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you going to give the example about you and fashion?
Oh, I forgot about that.
Because I thought that was a good one.
Okay, I don't know if it fits anymore.
If it doesn't, that's okay.
What did I just say? Asking the right question. Okay, yeah, I can tell a story right here. So we have to find the way to ask the right question about what we are doing and why we're doing it. When I was younger, I started becoming interested in fashion, not like high fashion, but just, regular everyday things and what I liked to wear. And I was seeing what other people my age were doing, and I didn't want to do what they were doing. But I still wanted to fit in, but I needed it to be different. And so I found that that there was kind of this push in the girls my age to not wear dresses. They wanted to wear shorts. I don't even think leggings were a thing yet. But, they wanted to wear shorts or jeans. And I was like, I'm just going to wear dresses then. And so that's what I did. And I liked wearing dresses, but it wasn't really fully true to who I was. I was trying to find something, right? The what makes me feel like I'm enough. And it really was this a feminine feel. But I didn't have a word or an expression for that. And my mind thought different and feminine dresses. Okay. That's different and feminine right now. So that's what I did. And that was my pendulum swing, right? I went from something that I thought was, I don't know if boyish is the right word, but, where people were trying to not be soft and feminine. And I went way over to all the way soft and feminine, which was close, but not really what I was reaching for. So I had to stop and ask, what am I doing? Yeah. And I realized, okay, yeah, I'm trying to find something that helps me to feel feminine and cute. Yeah. That's what I'm looking for. And once I knew what I was doing and why I was doing it, I was like, oh, okay, well, actually, I feel better about having my nails done. and that was how it was for me. I didn't so much care about if I was wearing a skirt or if I was wearing pants. I didn't care about that. What I really cared about was having my nails look pretty. But I had to find that, and I think it can sometimes be that searching thing. Yeah. Yeah. Looking the actual, I think sometimes it's just acknowledging. Teenagers don't do this very well. They don't acknowledge that they're trying to fit in or that they are
feeling like they don't belong until they get to the extreme place of not belonging, right? So they don't understand what they're searching for and why they're searching for it. And so consequently, you don't get very many teenagers that understand that it's okay to dress a little bit different or do this or that and be yourself without having to go to an extreme place. Because they don't know really what they're looking for yet. It's like you said, once you understood the question, what you were really trying to do, then you were able to define it.
Yeah. And, so I definitely, not fitting in is an important part of life.
Yeah.
Like you need to go through times where you don't fit in.
Yeah.
Because it helps you to know who you are.
Yeah.
Well, I should say this. It can help you. It can.
Yeah.
There are lots of people who don't allow it to help them find out who they are.
Right, because they're afraid.
Yeah. Because all of a sudden they're not safe. All of a sudden I'm not enough. Instead of asking, I think, anyway.
I think, okay, so I think what you're saying is when we go into these difficult situations, it can nurture us to ask if there's something wrong with us, right?
Right.
And if there isn't anything wrong with us, then we figure out what we need to do.
Right.
But if instead we say to ourselves, there's something wrong with me, there really is, and I don't want to know what it is, or there's something wrong with me and there's nothing I can do about it, or we go into these other answers that don't encourage us to find out what we can do or if this is even a good fit for us.
Right. Are we asking, do I like what I'm doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is this the way I want to act?
Yeah.
Is this the way I want to be?
Yeah.
Or, is this the way I want to feel? Because sometimes the action, matches well with everybody, but the feeling doesn't feel good.
Right.
So I just think it's always interesting to, hear about people's experiences and understand that even though we're all living a different life, we're in different places in the world with different incomes and all these things, we're all still facing the same questions. Am I enough?
Yeah, okay, so I was thinking of this example. This is like from the hip totally, but okay, if you, or me actually, I used to like the X-Men movies. And I felt like, wow, all these people are similar to me. They like X-Men.
Right.
And then one day I quit liking the movies.
Okay.
And at first, my first question is, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me that I don't like X-Men anymore?
That would be my question.
Right? But then my next question, instead of saying, oh my gosh, something's wrong with me, truly wrong with me, I just asked, what's changed in me?
That's a good question.
What's changed, or is there something gone or missing, maybe is the word, I don't know, that I used to do or have that I don't have now, or maybe has something else changed, like the movies and the storylines or something like that, where I started to feel like it was redundant and it was treating me like I was stupid.
Right.
Is really what it started doing. But I had to recognize that and be okay with it. Like, I guess I'm not an X-Men fan anymore.
Right. For the newer movies,
For the newer movies,
okay,
yeah.
I thought you were saying you just suddenly didn't like the X-Men.
I loved
like, how did you not?
I know. I loved
what's
the
going
old
on?
ones, and then I quit liking them, and I thought,
quit liking the new ones.
Yeah, and I thought, what is going on with me that I don't like these new ones? But I had to realize that was okay, that I didn't like those new ones. So, like when Taggart was talking about him, my son, I'd kind of, just kind of block him out because I didn't like them anymore. And I didn't know how to talk with my son, who we used to talk about X-Men movies.
Right, now you're like, I have nothing to talk about with this.
Because I don't like it anymore. And now I feel like we don't belong together, and I didn't know what to do with that for a little bit. And then, so I had to go through that. But, it goes deeper, right? You can go to really important things in life, not just like X-Men, right?
Yeah. And I think, finding those places where you don't fit anymore, where you don't match, where you recognize I don't belong. You don't have to be angry too. And I think that's kind of, what
I
we
was
can take like
afraid
that little
actually
stories,
from
like
that
fear.
Taggart would. I was afraid that Taggart would not want to talk to me anymore,
Right.
or
And
have
that-
anything in common with me anymore because I didn't care for the new X-Men movies.
And it's so interesting because, you know, that's the exact same pattern that somebody who leaves a religion feels, or someone who comes out, right? That's the same exact feeling because we all go through it with different things,
Right.
you know, and we want to match. We have a desire to belong, but we're really looking for being accepted for who we are and for knowing that we're enough. So, you know, it's a lot to take in on understanding why you don't feel like you fit in. Well, you don't feel like you fit in because you don't really. Nobody fits in.
Nobody does really. Yeah. Kenzie and I will always walk through life with a little bit of feeling like we're disconnected from someone else, right? That maybe I don't belong over here or you don't belong over there.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
I think, in fact, you guys, that's like the biggest lesson we have today, right? Is that it is okay to not feel like you fit in. You do not need to make people want to accept you, and you do not need to make yourself be acceptable either.
Right.
You need to trust and live a life that you feel is purposeful for you.
Yes.
You know?
And I think, you know, as friends in our life, we go through these patterns a lot. You gain friends, you lose friends. And it's the same as an adult when you're trying to make friends. It's just as hard and sometimes harder than when you were little to figure out, you know, how do you fit in with someone? How do you find those similarities? How can you match? And you still feel that intense desire to belong and to feel, you know, it's hard to not want everything to match. With my best friends, I'm like, I want everything to match. But I actually have found that I like when something doesn't match too, because then I get to learn something new, you know? And that's important to be able to have those places, because when you create those healthy relationships, and we're going to talk a lot about that next time, but when you don't match and they still accept you and you go, oh, I'm still enough.
Yeah. And that's really it. It's easier to know we are lovable when we look at others, right? And know that they love and accept us for who we are.
Yeah.
And that kind of gives us, even though I know like in the 10 Commandments, it says to love yourself and then, you know, and then others. A lot of us do it backwards, right? We look at our friends, and if they love and accept us for who we are, then we're like, oh, okay, I'm acceptable for who I am then.
Right.
And I can accept myself. So we kind of do it backwards, but it's so important to know that we are acceptable for who we are.
Yeah. And I think it, you know, as you work on yourself and you really gain that I love myself, your interactions with your friends affirm that, your friends and your family, you know, those people that are your tribe, they can affirm that you are enough.
Yeah. 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 So in a nutshell, guys, you're never going to fit in, but it's more important that you learn that you don't have to fit in.
Yeah. And it makes a lot of sense why you feel like you need to fit in.
Yes.
That's the other thing we want you guys to understand is, you know, you're supposed to feel like you need to fit in.
Yeah.
It helps you.
In so many ways, right?
Yep.
And then we
Helps
just
you and
figure
it's
out
hard.
the healthy parts and use those. So now you know why you don't fit in, and nobody does.
So join us next week for the next part of this so that we can help you guys learn even more about fitting in, so you can know how to create the life that you actually want to live despite all of the things that push against you. Thanks for watching, you guys, or listening. We are so happy that you are here on this journey with us. Go ahead and like and subscribe or follow us on any platform that you're on. Love you guys. Bye.
Bye. Love you.